Your phone buzzes. Before you even look, your heart rate spikes. You check it. It's them. Your chest does something strange, something warm and tight at the same time. You read the message 4 times, even though it only takes 2 seconds to understand it. You are not being dramatic. You are not imagining this. Your brain right now is running one of the most powerful chemical events a human being can experience. And it looks almost identical physical takeover of your brain. Anthropologist Helen Fisher spent years putting people who had just fallen in love into fMRI scanners. She showed them a photo of the person they were obsessed with, then watched their brain light up in real time. One region activated more than almost any other, the ventral tegmental area, a small cluster of cells buried deep in the midbrain, ancient in evolutionary terms, older than language, older than tools. What does the ventral tegmental area actually do? It produces dopamine, the same neurotransmitter involved in cocaine use, gambling, and nicotine addiction. When you're newly in love, this region floods your brain with it. Motivation surges, focus narrows. Suddenly, one single person becomes the most important stimulus in your entire world, and everything else, your job, your friends, your sleep, quietly fades into the background. This is why new love feels less like happiness and more like obsession. You replay conversations. You analyze a single word choice in a text message for 20 minutes. You feel euphoric one moment and anxious the next, entirely dependent on whether they respond quickly or slowly. This isn't a personality flaw. This is dopamine doing exactly what it evolved to do, driving you toward a reward with relentless, almost involuntary focus. But dopamine isn't working alone. Psychiatrist Donatella Marazziti ran a study comparing the blood serotonin levels of people who had recently fallen in love to the blood serotonin levels of people diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. What she found was startling. The two groups looked almost the same. Both had significantly lower serotonin than the general population. Lower serotonin is linked to intrusive, repetitive thoughts. The kind of thoughts that circle back to the same subject over and over, refusing to let go. So when you can't stop thinking about someone, when their face appears in your mind uninvited dozens of times a day, that isn't just romantic imagination. That is your brain chemistry temporarily resembling a clinical obsession. Early stage romantic love and OCD share a biological fingerprint. Your brain isn't malfunctioning. It's doing precisely what it's built to do when it decides someone matters. Why would evolution build something this intense? Consider what falling in love actually needs to accomplish. Human infants are almost uniquely helpless. Unlike most mammals, a human baby cannot walk, cannot feed itself, cannot survive alone for years. Raising a child successfully often required 2 committed adults working together for a long stretch of time. Evolution needed a mechanism powerful enough to override rational cost-benefit thinking and lock 2 people together long enough to get through that vulnerable stretch. Obsession is inconvenient. Obsession is also extremely effective at keeping people bonded. There's a reason this feeling doesn't last forever, though. The intense, dopamine-driven phase of romantic love typically peaks somewhere between 12 and 18 months. Your brain cannot sustain that level of chemical intensity indefinitely. It would be exhausting. It would be, biologically speaking, unsustainable. So what replaces it? A different hormonal system takes over. Oxytocin and vasopressin, sometimes called the bonding hormones, begin to dominate. These chemicals are associated with attachment, trust, and long-term partnership rather than obsessive craving. This is the shift people often describe when a relationship moves from butterflies to something calmer, deeper, and quieter. It isn't love fading. It's love changing form, trading intensity for stability. Here's something that reveals just how strange and physical this whole process really is. Psychologist Arthur Aaron ran a now famous experiment. He had strangers cross either a rickety, terrifying suspension bridge high above a canyon or a low, stable, completely unthreatening bridge. On the other side, an attractive researcher greeted them and asked a few questions. The strangers who crossed the terrifying bridge were significantly more likely to feel attracted to that researcher and to reach out afterward than the ones who crossed the safe bridge. Why? Fear and arousal produce a very similar physiological signature to attraction. A racing heart, sweaty palms, heightened alertness, Aaron's subjects were misattributing the fear response from the bridge to romantic interest in the person standing in front of them. Your brain, in that moment, essentially asked itself, "Why is my heart racing?" and grabbed the nearest plausible explanation. This is why intense, high adrenaline situations, roller coasters, near misses, dramatic first encounters so often get remembered as romantic. Your nervous system doesn't always distinguish cleanly between danger and desire. Both light up strikingly similar circuits, which brings us back to your phone. That same misattribution machinery is still running, just in a much smaller, quieter way. The anxious wait for a reply, the small spike of uncertainty, the relief when the message finally comes through. Your brain treats that uncertainty almost like a reward system with a variable payout, similar to the mechanism that makes slot machines so compelling. You don't know exactly when the reward is coming, so you keep checking. Modern dating apps and messaging platforms didn't invent this circuitry. They just discovered how to trigger it constantly. Every notification is a tiny hit of uncertainty resolved. Every unanswered message is a tiny hit of uncertainty unresolved, which, biologically, can feel even more compelling than a resolved one. Neuroscientists have long noted that anticipation of a reward often produces a stronger dopamine response than the reward itself. This is part of why the moments before a reply can feel more intense than the reply. So the next time your chest tightens at a name on your screen, or you find yourself rereading the same 3 messages, know what's actually happening beneath the surface. This isn't weakness. This isn't something wrong with you. It's an ancient survival mechanism built over millions of years to bond 2 people together long enough to raise a helpless, dependent human being, now firing off in response to a glowing rectangle in your hand. The wiring hasn't changed, only the trigger has. Your phone buzzes again. Before you even look, your heart rate spikes. Now you know exactly why. And somehow, knowing the mechanism doesn't make it any less powerful. It just makes it a little less lonely.